Welcome, Team Resistance, to the 2021 Programming Apprentice Training. This is Jim Huffman. I've been a programming mentor since 2012. Today's lesson, we're going to continue to extend how to use VS Code and the FRC software. We'll review how to launch the VS Code 2020, create a new project for FRC Timed Robot Template. We're going to clean up that template code for Team Resistance use. Then we're going to add some code, some hardware digital inputs and outputs, and then we're going to add an interlock between the DO and the DI. Finally, we're going to look at the information on the simulator. We're going to launch it from the palette, and we're going to use it to demo the code we just wrote. So let's get started. Let's review how to launch VS Code. Here's a screenshot of a section of my desktop. Note that I have 3 VS Codes. We have a 2019, a 2020, and a VS Code standalone. Notice also we have some 2019 and 2020 smart dashboard shuffleboards. We'll take a look at those later. If I open up the properties on each one of those, note that they're all stored in a different location. This one's under 2019, this one's under 2020, and the standalone is under Microsoft. So it becomes important to remember where you launch. So let's make sure we launch the 2020. Let's go ahead and launch FRC VS Code 2020. Alright, so here's the splash screen, the opening screen for VSC. I forgot to mention last time, there's a little help area down here on this opening screen. Cheat sheet, videos, tips and tricks. You might want to peek and poke around inside of there. Right now we're going to go ahead and create a new project. You can hit Control-Shift-P and type in WPI. You come up here into the corner and click on the WPI command palette icon. We want to create a new project. Project type, template, language, Java. Team Resistance uses timed robot. Where do we want to store it? We're going to store it in on my machine, _FRC. That's because with this next line is checked, it will create the project folder for us. So my new robot. Team number 86, go 86. And then this last is the simulator. If we are using the RoboRio, leave it unchecked. However, we're going to be using the simulator. So let's go ahead and check that. And we'll take a look at that a little later as to how to uncheck it or turn it on and off. So let's go ahead and generate the project. Yes, I would like to open it. So the first time out, it takes a while to generate. Notice down here it's trying to build it. While it's building, we're going to go ahead and open up Robot just to see that it's there. Yep, everything's there, and it's still building. So when it's finished, we'll have our base project. We're going to go in and edit this and kind of clean it up for the Team Resistance template. All right, and we'll take care of that in a second. As soon as it finishes building, this thing takes forever. All right, we'll catch it next. All right, so it finally finished compiling. Got a build successful. We're going to go ahead and clean this up for Team Resistance use. Basically, we're going to delete everything except for timed robot method, or class, I guess I should call it, and any any init or periodic methods. If we need any of this, we can add it back later, but we usually move it around after this. So let's start. Let's get rid of these sendable and dashboard and all. We're just going to go ahead and delete that. And then we're going to scroll down a little bit and we're going to delete these variables. Actually, they're constants. There's one variable, but their final makes them a constant. Notice when I delete all this, I end up with a bunch of errors. These little red lines are errors. Over here is a map of the code with the red lines showing some errors. So let's go ahead and delete this out of the robot ini. I like to leave a little space between my code. Just kind of opens it up a little bit. Makes it a little bit easier for me to read. Nothing in robot periodic. There is something in autonomous where, again, we're not going to use this code. So let's just get rid of it right away. And then we're going to scroll down, and here's some in the periodic. Remember, periodic, we initialize it. And again, I leave some spaces here. They weren't doing anything in teleop. So there's nothing in initialize or periodic, nothing in the disable mode going on, nothing in the test initialize or test periodic mode. This last bracket, this start bracket starts this method, this bracket ends the method. This bracket here, if we follow the line up to the top, ends the class. Notice there's only 2 spaces here. I like 4. That's my preference. So if you come down here, it says spaces 2. If you click on it using spaces, you can, right now it's set for 2. Set it for 4. Just my preference, but since Team Resistance likes that, if you highlight this whole thing, except for the class and the last bracket and hit tab, it opens it up to 4. Just makes it a little bit easier to read. I like it that way. So again, leave the comments. We could edit them later. No reason to take them out. Most of them are functional. So we're going to move on and add some code. Oh, before we leave this though, first thing we want to do is save it with a Control S, right? That saves the code that or the modifications we've made. And the other thing we want to do is let's build it. Let's make sure we didn't create any, let's build the code, make sure we didn't create any problems. Just in case. Build successful. So let's go ahead and edit this. First thing we want to do is go up here to the top, and we want to import just the part of the library that we need. Import. Notice VS Code FRC libraries trying to help us out a little bit. Import, and I could type all this in again. I'm going to save myself some headaches. Control C. Control V, and when I hit dot, now I can type in digital input. Now I can use the up and down arrows. There's digital input. Hit the tab key, it fills it in for me. It says it's not being used right now. Well, let's come down here and use it. Here's timed robot. Let's put a variable in there. Let's make it a public variable. Let's call it a digital input. Notice it's helping me again. It's already highlighted, so let's just hit the tab key. And what do we want to call that digital input? That's a type, let's call it red button. We could hold off on initializing the red button. Notice we haven't assigned it anywhere. This is only instantiated a red button, a digital input called a red button. Well, let's go ahead and initialize it with equals new digital input, hit tab again, and now it's asking me what channel I want this on. So let's type in 0. Put in the semicolon at the end. All Java statements end in a semicolon. Notice I haven't done the output yet. Let's type it in anyway. Let's type in public digital output. Notice it's highlighted again. Tab. This one, let's call it a red LED. And we're also going to initialize it. New digital output. Digital output. And notice now it's asking me for the channel. Let's put this on channel 4. And add the semicolon at the end. Now, if you're paying attention, look up here at the top. Again, FRC, WPI tried to help us out, VSC tried to help us out. They filled it in. They knew that we were using a digital output, so it went ahead and assigned or imported the digital output code. All right. So now we've defined a red button and a red LED. Let's interlock them. Let's scroll on down. Let's not put in no initialization needed. There's nothing that runs constantly when the robot's turned on. We're not doing it in autonomous mode. We're going to use it in teleop mode. Again, there's nothing to initialize on the red button or the red LED because we're going to command it in teleop mode. So let's add a line of code. And we're going to interlock them. So we want, when we press the button, we want the LED to turn on. All right, so if, right, the red, and there it is, red button already, hit tab. But that's just the object. That's not the method, right? So we need a method to go get, down arrow, tab, get that value. And we're going to compare it to true. So if it's on, let's do something. And what do we want to do? We want to take the red LED, right? And again, that's just the object. There's methods behind those objects. We want to set that red LED on or off. In this case, the value is true. Right? So that's the, when the button's pressed on, well, what happens when we release it? Well, when we release it, the button's going to read false. Right? And we want the red LED to read false as well. Right? And then we end them with a semicolon, which works out. Again, that's all the code we want to write at this time. We're not going to do anything in disable or anything in test. It's all right here. So we've added code, we've added the hardware. Let's go let's build it first, right? We want to save it. Again, Control S to save it. And then we want to build it, make sure our code's clean. Notice there's no red lines, here, but let's just be on the sure side and go ahead and build the code before we go simulating it. And we added a little bit more and we got a build successful. So let's go simulate. Okay, for the simulator, let's go look at our favorite FRC website, Docs WPILib. This should look familiar to you. Let's scroll on down to the tools, and in the tools we'll find Robot Simulator. Introduction to Simulation. There's our splash screen, our opening screen. We had checked that to make sure we had the simulator active. Right? How do we change it back and forth? Well, there's a file called build Gradle, and we need to make sure that it says include desktop support. We want it for the simulator, we have it true. If we don't, then we change it to false. Well, let's go take a look at build Gradle real quick. There it is, build Gradle. We click on it. It's a file just like any other file. And if we look around, we'll find include desktop support true. Change that to false, save it, Control S. And when you build your code or deploy your code, you can deploy it to the RoboRio. Let's go ahead and close it though. We didn't make any changes. So how do we launch this thing? Well, we launch it just like everything else. We go up to the WPI command palette and we look for simulate robot code on desktop. So let's go ahead and launch it. Just while we're here though, on the next screen you'll see the interface. This is what we're going to be going for. Here's the description of all the stuff that it does. So let's go up here to the WPI command palette, and if we simulate robot on desktop, so if we didn't have that right at the top, we could have typed in sim and it would have popped up. So we're going to go ahead and simulate the robot code. Notice it's building the code. It's now generating the interface. Up here at the top, hardware application simulator graphical user interface, right? HowSim GUI. Got to check that, click OK. Building a bunch more stuff, and voila, there is our GUI interface, our hardware interface. Right here at the top is our hardware. I've already modified this. This comes in as DI and DO on channel 0 and channel 4. Let's change this from high to low. Nothing happened. What's the deal? Well, we're disabled right now. It launches in default as disabled. We put all our code in teleop. So let's go ahead and put some code, turn on teleop. We're in low and low. We change this to high. High is now high. I should have changed this back, but let's look at this. Notice if I right click, I can make this read anything I want. So just it's in the documentation, right click, and you can change the name of that. But again, pretty cool, huh? Low, low, high, high. Go ahead and play with it. Here's analog inputs. Here's joysticks. We'll be covering those a little bit later. I'm going to go ahead and disable that and close it. Look, we're now on debug. All right, we were up here on files. So let's click on files again, and I'm back to my usual menu. All right, so enjoy, play around with it, see what you can, see how much trouble you can get into, and have fun. We'll give you a challenge here in a second. All right, so the simple challenge, just add 2 more DIs, 2 more DOs. Why don't we make them, let's say yellow button and green button and yellow LED and red, green LED. Being creative here, right? And then interlock those 2 to each other respectively. Again, be constructive, be patient, be flexible. Everything's in flux right now. We're open to suggestions. Let me know if you want to see something else. Next lesson, we're going to be reviewing digital logic, ands, ors, not. Exclamation point is the symbol for not in Java. Then we're going to sequence, not just interlock them, we're going to do some sequencing with the DOs and the DIs. So above all, have fun, enjoy it. See you next time.